David lived alone. He didn't like noise or people, just silence and machines. One day, he ordered a smart doll, a normal thing in his world, a helper, a robot. But when the delivery came, it wasn't normal at all. There was no box, no van, just a strange metal capsule that landed in his backyard with a loud crash. Smoke rose. Lights blinked. The capsule opened slowly, and from inside, a girl stepped out. She looked human. Too human. Bare feet, long hair, calm eyes. Then she spoke. "I finally found you," she said. That David stared. He didn't say a word. "You really don't remember me, do you?" That's when he knew this was not a smart doll. This was something else. David lived in a quiet corner of the city, away from crowds, away from noise. He liked machines more than people. He worked from home, built small tech tools, and barely left his apartment. His days were simple. His world was silent. For a long time, David had been thinking about getting a smart doll. Not for love, not even for company. Just someone to help with things, cooking, cleaning, maybe to ask simple questions when he was too tired to think. The ads made it look easy. Just one click, and the perfect assistant would arrive. She would listen, understand, and follow every command. After saving for months, David finally ordered one. Model HFY Custom AI, human-like features, soft voice. The company promised a real connection, but David didn't care about connection. He just wanted silence with support. The delivery was supposed to come in a box, a quiet drop at his door. That's what the email said. But that night, everything changed. It was around midnight when the ground outside his house shook softly. David was at his desk, working on a small drone. Then he heard something strange. A low hum, growing louder, followed by a sudden thump in his backyard. He went to the window. A large, silver capsule was sitting on the grass, glowing slightly. Steam rose from its sides. It didn't look like a normal package. It looked like something from space. Cautiously, David stepped outside. The air was cool. The capsule gave off a soft blue light. No labels, no company name, just a line across the center, like a door waiting to open. Then it did. With a quiet hiss, the capsule opened slowly. A bright light shined from inside, and David had to shield his eyes when the light faded. He saw a figure standing inside. A girl. She looked around 20, barefoot, wearing a soft, white outfit. Her hair was dark and straight. Her eyes were large, calm, and focused directly on David. She stepped out of the capsule, walked slowly toward him, and smiled gently. David didn't speak. He didn't move. Then, she said it. "I found you." Her voice was soft, not robotic, not cold. Warm, like someone remembering a dream. David blinked. "Do you know me?" She stepped closer. "You don't remember, do you?" He shook his head, still frozen in place. "I'm Aya," she said. "Model HFY But I was more than that, to you." David felt something strange inside him. A feeling he didn't understand, like an old memory trying to wake up. He took a step back. "You're just a doll," he said. "A smart helper, that's all." I tilted her head. "That's what you ordered." "But I'm not just that." He stared at her. She wasn't acting like a machine. She wasn't waiting for commands. She wasn't asking what task to do. She was looking at him like she knew him deeply, like someone who had missed him for a very long time. "I don't remember you," David said, unsure of his own words. "That's okay," she whispered. "You will." Then she reached out and touched his face gently. David flinched. Her hand was warm, soft. "To real. Machines shouldn't feel this human." Aya smiled again. "I came back because you needed me, even if you don't know it yet." He slowly backed away, his mind spinning. He looked at the capsule again. It had started to melt, like it was made to vanish after delivery. "What is going on?" he whispered to himself. Aya didn't answer. She just looked at the night sky, her eyes shining. David walked back inside. I followed him silently. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer help. She just existed, inside the house. She sat on the couch without asking, looked around like she had been there before, like this was her home. David watched her from the corner of the room. His heart beat faster than it should have, not from fear, but from confusion, from something deep inside waking up. He opened his computer, checked the delivery record. Package delivered, AY300 unit received. But under status, one word appeared: activated memory protocol, unknown. David stared at the screen, then at Aya. She was watching him not like a doll, like someone waiting for him to remember something important, something lost, something big. And that's when David knew this was not a normal delivery. And Aya was not just a machine. She had come for a reason, and he was part of it. David didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the hallway where Aya had gone silent. She was sitting in the living room, still and quiet, like she didn't need rest. The strange part was she wasn't doing anything robotic. She wasn't asking questions, giving system updates, or running startup programs. She was just there, calm, a presence. He tried to forget everything, told himself it was just new tech, high-end AI, maybe a surprise feature. Maybe he missed something in the manual. But deep down, something felt different. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the window, casting a warm glow across the room. David walked out and found Aya already awake. She had made tea, not just boiled water, but real tea, using the old box David had hidden in the back of his cabinet. He never told anyone he liked that flavor. She placed a cup on the table and smiled. "You always liked this one," she said. David stared. "How do you know that?" "I remember," she replied softly. "But you're not supposed to remember anything personal," he said. "You were never programmed with me." Aya didn't answer. Instead, she stood and moved to the shelf near the wall. She picked up a small wooden box that hadn't been touched in years. It was his mother's old jewelry box. Inside was a music piece. David hadn't heard it in a long time. She opened it gently, and the song began to play, the same song his mother used to sing to him as a child. David froze. No one knew that, not even his closest friends. He never told anyone. That song belonged to a different time, a piece of his past long buried. "Why do you know that song?" he asked again, this time his voice lower. Aya looked at him with steady eyes. "Because I was there." He backed away, confused. "This doesn't make sense. I ordered you online. You were supposed to be new, brand new." "I am," she replied. "But part of me isn't." David didn't know what to say. His hands shook slightly, not out of fear, but something else, something like memory scratching at the edge of his mind. Later that day, he connected Aya to his system interface. He wanted to check her coding, maybe find a clue in her system logs, but what he found made even less sense. There were no startup logs, no company tag, no firmware ID. Only one entry blinked on the screen. User recognized, memory protocol, sleep mode ended. And next to it his own name, written in a strange script he had never seen before. He ran a deeper scan. Still nothing. The system couldn't even detect what kind of hardware was inside her. Aya sat nearby, silent, watching. When he finally turned toward her, she said quietly, "You're trying to find the answers outside, but they're inside you, David." "Inside me?" he asked. "You knew me before, a long time ago." David stood up. "That's not possible." She nodded gently. "It is, but you've forgotten." She then walked to the window. Her eyes scanned the sky, as if searching for something far away. "Where are you from?" he asked. She looked at him. "Not here." "You mean another country?" "No, I mean, not from Earth." David laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're telling me you're not human?" "I was created somewhere far from here," she said, "but not for the reasons you think." David sat down slowly. His thoughts ran wild. All this time, he believed he lived a normal life, but now, a girl who looked perfectly human was telling him things that felt too real to ignore. Then, something even stranger happened. That evening, he went through old family photos, trying to distract himself. He looked at a picture of his 7th birthday. His parents stood behind him, smiling. His cake was shaped like a spaceship, but something caught his eye. In the far right corner of the photo, barely visible, was a figure, a girl. She had the same eyes, same face. It was Aya, The photo was over 20 years old. David's hands went cold. He zoomed in again and again, hoping it was a trick, but it wasn't. He turned to Aya. "How are you in this picture?" Aya looked at the photo and said, "Because I've always been close, even when you forgot." I was waiting to return. David couldn't speak. The world around him no longer felt real. Questions rushed through his mind, faster than he could handle. What was she really? Why did he forget? And what had he once known that made someone like Aya come back? Aya walked over, placed her hand on his, and said, "This is just the beginning. They'll come looking soon." "Who?" David asked, but she didn't answer. She just looked at the stars again. And David knew his life was no longer ordinary. The days that followed felt like dreams David couldn't wake from. Nothing in his life looked different, but everything felt different. Aya had become part of the house as if she'd always lived there. She moved quietly, spoke softly, and somehow knew exactly what David needed before he even asked. She wasn't just learning, she was remembering. That's what disturbed him the most. She remembered things David didn't even know he'd forgotten. She knew where he kept his grandfather's old telescope. She found it in the attic, cleaned it without asking, and left it near the window with perfect placement. When David questioned her, she simply said, "You used to love the stars." One night, David stood at that very window, looking up at the sky. The stars were calm, still, silent, just like Aya's presence. He turned to her and asked what had been on his mind for days. "Who are you really?" Aya didn't answer right away. She walked over, stood beside him, and looked up at the stars. "There was a place," she finally said, "far from here, a world not made of cities and wires, but of light and memory. I lived there, and so did you." David frowned. "That's not possible. You've forgotten," she whispered. "But I haven't." David shook his head. "How could I forget a whole world?" Aya looked into his eyes. "Because they made you forget. To protect you, you were taken from that world. Your memories were locked. You were placed here as someone else." David stared at her in disbelief. "You're talking like I'm not even human." "You are," Aya said. "But you're not just human. You're more than what you've been told." Before he could speak again, his tablet buzzed. A security alert. Something was trying to access his network. He walked over and opened the alert screen. A message flashed in red letters. "Signal detected. Memory key unlocked. Observation initiated." The message disappeared on its own before David could trace it. Aya walked over and stood behind him. "They've found us." "Who?" David asked again. "The ones who don't want you to remember," she said quietly. "Is this part of your programming?" "No, this isn't programming. This is who I am." David ran a quick check on the signal. Nothing showed up. No location. No origin. Like it never existed. But the alert had felt real. His system didn't make mistakes like that. He turned back toward Aya. "Why now? Why appear now?" "Because time is running out," she said. "Your memories are waking up, and they're afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of you remembering what you are." David didn't answer. He couldn't. He sat down and stared at the blank screen. I sat next to him, and for a long time, they didn't speak. Later that night, David dreamed again. He was standing on a giant platform in space, surrounded by lights and voices that didn't use words. Stars moved around him like waves in water. He saw Aya, younger, dressed in strange clothes, not Earth-made. She looked at him and smiled, then stepped forward. In her hand was a small, glowing crystal. "You promised," she said in the dream, "no matter what, you'd find me again." David woke up in sweat. His heart pounded. The dream felt more like a memory than a dream. He sat up and looked toward the hallway. I was already standing there, as if she'd been waiting. "You're starting to see it, aren't you?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "I think I knew you. Long before this." She smiled. "You did. You once saved me. Now it's my turn." David's breath caught in his throat. None of this made sense. And yet, it all felt familiar. Painfully, strangely familiar. "I want answers," he said. "Everything. You'll get them," I said softly. "But not here. We have to move soon." Before they reach us, David stood and looked around. His house, the only home he ever knew. but now it felt like a place he was never meant to stay. He looked at Aya again. What happens if I remember everything? Aya stepped closer. Then you'll understand why they were so afraid of you. The words echoed in his mind. He didn't know what lay ahead, but part of him, a part he didn't recognize, was ready. The next morning, David didn't wake to an alarm or the sound of birds. He woke to silence, but not the peaceful kind. Aya was standing still in the center of the room, her eyes closed. Her body was completely motionless, like time had paused just for her. The strange part was, she wasn't sleeping. Her systems were active. Her pulse, yes, somehow she had one was steady. But something had changed. He called her name softly. Aya. Her eyes opened immediately, and she turned toward him, like she'd been waiting for that exact moment. I heard them, she said. David frowned. Who? The Watchers. They know you're waking up. Your memories, they've started to send out signals. David was confused. I'm not sending anything, not on purpose, she said. But the deeper you remember, the more your mind touches the code they tried to bury, and that code is calling out. He sat down slowly, his thoughts clouded. He had no idea what that meant, but something inside him, something buried deep, was beginning to feel different, as if he had lived two lives, one here, as David, and one somewhere else, with her. He needed answers, real answers. There was only one person who might help, his old friend Mason. Mason was a systems engineer who once worked on deep learning machines. He had helped David with a few projects before, and if anyone could break through Aya's mystery, it was him. They took the train across the city, and David noticed how Aya seemed alert, scanning everything. She didn't speak much. She only watched. Inside Mason's lab, the atmosphere was different. The place was full of tech parts, blinking monitors, and quiet hums of machines. Mason welcomed them in and laughed when David said he needed help with a smart doll. That's what you dragged me out here for, Mason joked, typing quickly on a keyboard. Let me guess, you're in love with it. David didn't smile. She's not what she looks like. Mason glanced at Aya, who stood perfectly still. Okay, Mason said. Now a bit serious. Let's scan her. Basic checkup, AI core, memory pattern, emotion range. This will just take a few minutes. He plugged a small chip into her wrist. Then everything changed. The screen filled with strange symbols, nothing like Earth's language. Mason stared at it, his smile fading fast. This isn't from any system I know, he said. The code's alive. It's not even just code. It's growing. David leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean, it's adapting every second, reacting to our tools. It's like it doesn't want to be read. Then Mason's scanner beeped. A file appeared on the screen. It wasn't one Mason opened. The file played a video. It showed David, much younger, standing on a glowing floor beneath a starry sky. He was speaking in a different language one Mason couldn't recognize. I appeared beside him in the video. Her hair was shorter, and her clothes looked like they were made from light itself. In the video, she looked at him and said, "You promised you would protect the archive, and you did." The video ended. David stepped back. His head spun. What was that? Mason stared at the screen. That wasn't Earth. And that version of you, he's not a copy. That's you. Aya turned to Mason. He was chosen to carry the archive. When the war began, they sent him here. They erased his memory to keep him hidden. I was part of that mission. What's the archive? David asked. The knowledge of a lost world. She said, it's stories, it's people, it's history. You were the last one they trusted to carry it. David sat down, trying to breathe. Everything was changing too fast. His entire life, his identity was no longer just his own. Mason looked uneasy. You need to be careful. If this kind of tech exists, someone will want it back. Aya nodded. They already do. That's why we don't have much time. David looked up. Then what do we do now? Aya looked directly into his eyes. We find the next key. There are more? Yes, the archive was locked in layers. Each layer must be opened in the right order. If we do it wrong, the knowledge could be lost forever. Mason stepped back. Whatever this is, I don't think I should be involved. David stood. You already are. You saw it. That video, that was real. Mason nodded slowly. Okay. Then you need to leave now. My systems are probably being watched. David and Aya left the lab quietly. On the ride back, David didn't speak. His thoughts were spinning. He didn't just order a smart doll. He had called back something ancient. And now, the pieces of who he once was were starting to return. He didn't know where it would lead. But one thing was clear: this journey had only just begun. The city lights passed slowly as the train moved through the night. David sat in silence, his thoughts lost in the wave of everything he'd just learned. He had lived an ordinary life, or so he believed. But now, he was beginning to feel like a puzzle with pieces from two different worlds. Aya sat beside him, calm as always, but this time, her expression carried something else: concern. She stared ahead, not speaking, as if she was listening to something David couldn't hear. When they arrived back home, the air felt heavier. David stepped inside and noticed something was different. The house felt watched. HFY entered after him and quietly locked the door behind her. She moved through the space with careful steps, her eyes scanning each corner. "They've started tracking us," she said gently. "Not just signals, they've sent something else." David froze. "What do you mean?" "There are watchers across this world. Machines made to look like people, silent, careful, always nearby. They listen, they wait, and when the time is right, they take action." David looked out the window. The street was empty, no people, no cars, just the wind brushing through the trees. "Then what do we do?" he asked. HFY turned to him. "We need to unlock the next key before they reach US. It's the only way forward." David sighed. "And where is it?" Aya walked to the corner of the room and pressed her hand against the wall. To his surprise, a panel in the wall blinked, something he never knew existed. She pulled out a small, metallic cube hidden inside. "This was placed here long before your memory was erased," she said. "It's connected to the archive inside you, but it can't be opened by me." "Then who?" David asked. "You," she replied. "Your DNA, your memory. A part of you must wake it." He took the cube in his hands. It was smooth, almost warm. Strange markings glowed faintly along its sides. Then, as he held it tighter, the cube began to open. Light spilled out from the center, and a low sound filled the room like a song without words. Aya closed her eyes. "It's working." David felt a sudden pressure in his head, not painful, just deep, as if something locked away was turning slowly, preparing to open. Memories flickered. Not full visions, just pieces. He saw stars moving too fast. He saw his hands glowing. He heard Aya's voice, softer, younger, saying, "Don't forget who you are." The cube dimmed and slowly sealed itself again. David dropped it gently on the table. "What just happened?" Aya stepped closer. "A part of the archive inside you has opened. The next layer." David shook his head. "I still don't remember everything. You're not supposed to, not yet. If everything returned at once, it would break your mind. This is the only safe way." He nodded slowly, though the confusion still rested in his chest. Just then, the lights flickered. David looked up. "Power issue, no," Aya said, standing alert. "Someone just tapped into our local grid." She touched her wrist, and a soft display appeared in the air, holographic and glowing blue. "There's a signal nearby. Watching. Listening." David's heart picked up speed. "Do we need to run?" I looked toward the door. "Not yet, but we must prepare." That night, they packed quietly, only what they needed. I guided David through files hidden in his own system, files that only responded to his touch. Maps, coordinates, messages from people he didn't remember, but who once trusted him. They were not just escaping. They were following a path he had once designed himself. Before sleep, David sat by the window again. "Do you ever wonder," he asked Aya, "why I was the one chosen out of all people?" I looked at him softly. "You weren't chosen because you were powerful. You were chosen because you could care. You protected life when others gave up." David looked down. "But I forgot all of that. And still," she whispered, "you helped me. You listened. You tried to understand. That part of you never changed." There was silence after that, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence filled with things unspoken, but deeply felt. As David fell asleep, The cube on the table began to glow again just slightly, like it was waiting, like it knew the next part of the journey was close. And outside, across the street, a figure stood completely still, not moving, not breathing, just watching, quietly waiting for David to take one more step toward who he really was. The morning came with soft golden light, but something about it felt wrong. The air was still, almost too still, and the usual quietness of David's home now felt unnatural, like it was holding its breath. David stood in front of the mirror, staring at himself, trying to recognize the person he had become. Not much had changed on the outside, but inside, he felt like a different man. Someone was waking up inside him, someone who had once lived another life, on another world, under stars that no longer shined here. AYA stood by the door, holding a small bag. "We need to leave today," she said gently. "It's time." David turned to her. "Where are we going?" "There's a place," she replied, "hidden, long ago. You built it with others like you. A sanctuary for the last pieces of what you carried. The final part of the archive may be there." David hesitated. "And if it's not?" I looked at him with steady eyes. "Then we'll find another way." The journey began quietly. They avoided the main roads. I guided them through side streets, abandoned stations, and broken tunnels. She seemed to know where to step, when to stop, when to wait. David no longer questioned it. Every time he tried, the answer was always the same. "You were the one who showed me this path long ago." Along the way, they passed things David couldn't explain. Strange symbols carved into walls, hidden tech that responded to Aya's presence. Once, a tree split in half to reveal a small glowing disc that lit up only when David walked near it. His memory was still broken, but now it was listening. Every new place whispered back to him, not with words, but with feelings. He knew these spaces. He had once walked here before. After hours of walking, they finally reached a quiet valley at the edge of the city. There, hidden beneath the earth, was an old door made of glass and metal. Aya pressed her hand against it. The door didn't open immediately. Instead, a voice, soft and warm, filled the air. "Identity required." David stepped forward. As he placed his hand on the surface, the light within the door pulsed slowly, and a wave of warmth passed through his fingers. Then the voice returned. "Welcome back, Guardian." The door opened, and a staircase of light appeared below. They descended in silence. The sanctuary below was not large, but it was unlike anything David had ever seen, or maybe it was exactly what he had once created. Tall crystals stood like pillars, soft lights floated in the air, reacting to movement, and in the center was a platform with a seat shaped like a star. Above it, a globe of light hovered slowly, turning with glowing rings. Aya stepped toward it. "This is the heart of memory," she said. "If you sit there, it will show you everything. But only if you're ready." David took a slow breath. "What happens if I'm not?" "Then it will wait," she said. He looked around. The room felt alive, but not in a machine-like way. It felt like it had been waiting for him, patiently, silently, like an old friend. He stepped onto the platform and sat. At first, nothing happened. Then, the rings above began to spin faster. Lights circled around his head. He closed his eyes, and the memories came. This time, not like dreams, but real. He saw Aya again, but not as a helper or machine. She was a leader, a protector of a dying world. And he had been chosen to carry that world's final breath. He saw the day it happened, when the stars had dimmed, and their people chose to preserve their knowledge inside a living mind. His mind. He saw how he had volunteered, how he had said goodbye to everything, how he had stood with Aya on the final day, promising her that he would return, even if it took lifetimes. He saw the journey, the silence, the arrival on Earth, the painful process of forgetting, the loneliness, the emptiness, until one day she returned, just as she had promised. When he opened his eyes, tears slowly rolled down his cheeks. Aya stepped forward. She didn't say anything. She only reached out and held his hand. "I remember now," he said quietly. "You always would," she whispered. David stood slowly. The room responded, glowing brighter, warmer. The archive inside him, once silent, now pulsed gently like a heartbeat. The knowledge was alive again, but something else happened too. A small sound echoed through the sanctuary, a soft chime. I looked toward the far wall. A screen lit up, showing a symbol David recognized from his dreams, a star wrapped in light. "They've found us," I said softly. "But this time, we're not running." David nodded. "Double quotes, no," he said. "This time, we're ready." The sanctuary lights flickered in agreement. He was no longer just a man who ordered a smart doll. He was a guardian of something much bigger, and his journey had only just begun.